Okay, so the address is 9254 Queens Boulevard. It is located right next door to the post office for Rego Park. It is located in a really a tough location when it does come to construction because it's right where a lot of traffic does come together. You've got traffic that is flying down Elliott from Woodhaven. You've got traffic that is flying off of the ramp from the eastbound LIE. You've also got oncoming traffic from Queens Boulevard. So you've got all of that coming together there, which creates a real buildup. So whenever construction, as Michael Dunn astutely pointed out, when construction is happening and they have to stop traffic, it really does create quite the backup. And it is problematic. But as any of us know, there are times during construction where that is entirely unavoidable. But I do think, just as a note to us as board members, when that does happen, and we hear people complaining, please tell them to call 311, call the office with the SR number so that we can follow up, so that we can reach out to the site manager, because we've done that several times with the site up here on right near my block when they were laying foundation for what seemed like forever. The unit at 9254 Queens Boulevard will have 88 units. The audience will be families with children experiencing homelessness. These are New Yorkers. These aren't people that just came to the city. These are New Yorkers. The building is to be 8 stories tall. It is a 67,763 square foot building with a lot size of about 12,290 square feet. And it will be managed by an organization called West Hab. West Hab, for example, has managed projects similar to this in Westchester County, for example. The focus of 9254 Queens Boulevard will be temporary housing. And it will provide social services to those 88 families with children. It will provide on-site support services and employment resources. So this isn't just a housing. This is really what we've talked about as supportive housing. This is housing with the services on site. And we're going to get into more of what that is. What we know is that, and what the city has realized is that this hoteling isn't working. And I think that anyone that understands how families work would understand how hoteling for families for temporary housing would fail desperately and quickly, because families don't function in a single room. You know, they need to have what they will have there, which is a proper living apartment where they will be able to cook and where they will be able to clean. One of the things that they will do upon check-in, for example, is they will get a box of supplies for their apartment that will help them, for example, cook. To explain who, because this seems to be one of the questions, is who is going to live there. Individuals from Queens get prioritized placement, particularly those from CB6. The goal is to keep people sheltered in their home borough, closer to support networks, including schools, jobs, healthcare, family social services, houses of worship, and communities they call home. All of this is being done in an effort to provide stability to these families as they go through this very tumultuous situation, where they are losing the very place that they've called home. There will be one-on-one services on site. There will be case management, individual and group counseling. There will be permanency planning. There will be housing placement assistance, referrals to medical and mental health services, support groups, financial and budget planning, independent living and life skills workshops, recreational programming for children, and support in finding and securing employment. All of these things are meant to not only provide a form of stability, but also to provide a community of support, also to help the families move from the shelter back into their homes or back into a home. And it is also set up so that they are able to sustain and stay in that home, that they won't have to be repeat back into the system again where they need this housing. The goal is to move them out of this, and that's why they call it rapid rehousing, because they want to get them somewhere to live in their borough as close to their home as possible and give them exactly what they need to address how they got there so that they are then quickly able to get into a home, get into somewhere that they can call home, whether it be an apartment or a house. The additional services they provide are group services, children's services, including childcare, youth services, including school and educational support, and programming to help families move out of the shelter and achieve long-term stability. To take you through a little bit of what this might look like for intake. Intake at this shelter will be 24 hours, 7 days a week. There will be around-the-clock intake. Now, what has been described to me as how intake has typically worked is that there is one location for, let's say, women in the city, one location for men, one location for families with children to check in, and then they get assigned a shelter. This looks like a much different model. So I need to figure out if there is an intake. This is one of the questions I have is there an intake before the on-site intake? Because I'm not certain, and I would gather that there probably is. And I'd like to see if there's a way for us to sort of not make a family go, let's say, for example, go all the way to the Bronx to then come all the way back to Queens. So there is a round-the-clock intake at the center. Immediately, the family is assigned a residential aid. There's no waiting. They get a residential aid the minute they get there, and the residential aid helps them sort of get settled in. Within 48 hours, a caseworker is assigned, and there is orientation and intake that is completed at that time. And it is a bit of an involved process. During orientation, there is planning for permanent housing that starts immediately with the housing coordinator. So during the orientation, within that 48 hours, there's already a conversation starting that to move those families from the shelter, they're going to lay out a plan as to how to get them into permanent housing. They call it a living plan is put together that lays out goals and timeframes that the client and adult family member will be required to sign. You can't just move in there and not follow this process. It does not appear to be an option. The adult family member will have to put this plan together in coordination with the housing coordinator, and they will have to agree to its terms. Now, some items to note at this point. In June of last year, the district manager, myself, first vice chair Peter, and second vice chair Keith, met with the Department of Social Services. It was a virtual meeting where we were able to sort of get some information from them. Understand, we had been trying to get this meeting on the books for months because we were growing increasingly concerned that the site was becoming more and more visible, and we knew people in the community would have concerns and answers, and we wanted to be able to be transparent and open with the community, but we also didn't want to get ahead of the agency. So when, because agencies are to be partners. And quite frankly, I'm not that upset with DSS because we all know that for months and months and months, they have been pulled off of what they would normally do. And a lot of their solid resources have been deployed to dealing with the migrants. So the fact that we were able to meet with them in June was great. I'm just stating it took a long time just because of the circumstances that we all find ourselves in. That's not a criticism of DSS. So during the summer, they had asked us to put together a list of stakeholders that we would suggest to them. They will go through that list. So the executive committee compiled a list of people that we thought would be true stakeholders in the community. These would be people from local schools, houses of worship, community-based organizations, people that are in Rego Park. We're not dipping down into Forest Hills because we want to talk about the direct impact on that community. So we put that list together. We submitted it this September to DSS, and we are going to hear back from them probably in several weeks as to how they want to move forward. We've also included the police precinct as well, but we want to make sure that it's a balanced committee. But again, at the end of the day, DSS is really the one that's going to be running this process. I see your hand, Latrice. I'll get right to you. I just want to get through this slide. And then our understanding is that community engagement, there will be one community engagement event with the stakeholders under DSS leadership. Now, this is not a closed meeting. This is an open and transparent meeting. So even if, for instance, members of our board can't be on the stakeholders, it doesn't mean that we're not there, we're not listening, we're not contributing in one form or fashion. But we expect that to happen in the fourth quarter. So, we're talking October, November, December. We're waiting on them. Let me see if I had anything else. No, that was it. So